Everybody could take their seats, please. I call to order the regular meeting of the Community Unit School District 201 Board of Education for February 28th, 2012. We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Here.
Ms. Caparelli is here. Mr. Charleston?
Here.
Ms. Charlton? Mrs. Hancock?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Okay. Could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. And in your orange folder is a recommendation for an edit to the minutes for February 14th. Does anyone have any comments on that?
Well, I guess I would start out by saying I'm not sure why we're striking what the consensus of the board was. There was a topic on there, and I mean, the minutes should reflect what happened.
I suggested striking it for two reasons. One, there was a vote on it immediately after that, which is noted in the minutes, so it's somewhat redundant, right? I mean, the vote speaks for itself. It was a 4-3 vote, and candidly, it wasn't consensus. It was a 4-3 vote. Consensus, as I read the definition, meant general agreement, harmony.
I don't know,
In any case, it's redundant.
Well, I want it left in the minutes that the board voted to have the early childhood and First Start programs attend
It
South
is.
Elementary.
It is. It's the very next section, right there, early childhood timeline, voting.
Okay.
All right, excuse me, I'm okay with striking that part out since there is a motion that pretty much states the same thing at the end. What is and is not consensus, I don't really want to debate right now. But I would like to add to that some comments. It reads, Mrs. Thomas read a statement registering her objection to the proposal to move early childhood and First Start programs to the South School for the fall of 2012. And then you have a discussion then ensued regarding this matter. And I would like to add to that piece where additional comments both in favor of and in opposition to a 2012 timeline were expressed.
I agree.
To kind of get the
That's
other
fine.
Sure.
That's
I
fine.
agree.
piece in there. And then I'm fine with those edits. Okay. So we'll go back to the,
Did you write that down then, Joel? Or
I'm
is
sorry?
that written down somewhere then? Or do we have to go back to Judy to start those again? The minutes, the change that Joel suggested?
oh,
You'll approve them as amended, and then Judy will go in and make the changes.
okay. So let's return to the January 24th, 2012 minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January 24th, 2012 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the January 24th, 2012 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 2nd, 2012 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the closed session of the February 2nd, 2012 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 14th, 2012 regular meeting of the Board of Education as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. I don't have any cards for public comment, but are there any public comments at this time? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. I have one request to remove the personnel recommendations for discussion in closed session, and then we will vote on those after we return. So we'll be approving consent agenda items 2 through 7. Does anyone have any questions or discussions about any of those items?
Yeah, just a couple. Curious, Kevin, if you could describe in particular on the adoption of the biology textbook, the process by which that came about?
Sure. The adoption of the AP Bio textbook, there's one teacher at the high school that teaches that program. And so initially, she looked at various textbooks and then in turn presented to the rest of the science department so that the other science teachers as well could look at and review it. AP Bio is somewhat unique, and again, it's a singleton, and then also there really isn't a true program that feeds into it. There are suggested courses, and then after the teachers agreed with the selection, then the high school building administration reviewed it, make sure that there was a tie into the core standards, and then it was brought forward to the board for approval.
Are CAC processes still ongoing?
The CAC process, they're not currently going, but if you, one of the things we're recommending in the strategic plan is a curriculum council,
Yeah.
and so that would then replace that
Okay.
function.
That's fine. Then on the student tours, if I may, anybody else? Student tours. There's 3 of them. They're great. I have a question about the Europe tour, Eastern Europe tour. Obviously an exciting opportunity for some kids. And we've done, these European and sort of overseas tours before. I'm just going to express just a concern, because we have a 40% low-income school district. And that tour costs $3,300 and change. So, to the extent that you have a very fine student who happens to come from a low-income family that doesn't have $3,500 sitting around, how do they avail themselves of this kind of an opportunity?
Right now, there isn't anything in place that, in terms of, an application process or a way to fund a student.
Kevin, I have a question. In my experience, historically, there's a lot of fundraising that goes on, particularly when groups are going, out of state or on this type of tour. I don't notice that there's fundraising kind of outside of like band and sports. Is there other things? Is there an opportunity for that kind of thing?
Outside of student activities, typically it's the student activity co-curricular programs that are involved in fundraising. Once in a while, there's some, fundraising for charitable organizations, those types of things. But in terms of, something of this nature, student trips, to my knowledge, we haven't had that type of fundraising.
I'll add one piece to that, Annette. I know I went to the meeting for the 8th grade trip to Washington, and there's, a number of students going on that. And it was brought up kind of at the very early stages that if parents wanted to organize some sort of fundraising thing, it kind of would be up to them to, to band together, but it certainly was an option if they wanted to get involved at that level. I don't know of anything that came from that, but it was at least talked about in the planning process when kids were first signing up.
Would somebody own that, though? I mean, there is a PTO at the junior high. I don't know how large they are, but is there someone that would own it? I mean, like with the other groups, you have an already organized group of adults that, is really leading and guiding and encouraging. Whereas for academic travel or, this kind of even the 8th grade trip, there isn't already kind of a group that's established that has experience and is motivated and has meetings and, those are the kind of things you would need to really, or you would need some person to step up out of the wings sort of miraculously and be willing to lead that kind of effort.
And I don't know if anyone approached the junior high PTO on that, or I haven't heard of any organized effort to raise funds for students to go to that.
Yeah. So something worth discussing more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, from my vantage point, again, it's a great tour. It's certainly, it's excited to see it happening. But I'd love for the administration, and I hate to put a ball in your court, Kevin, because you look like a Pac-Man already. But but love for you to talk with Steve and with Peter about, if there's a way to facilitate, if there's a kid who, is truly a deserving kid, wants to go, talk about how that process would look and if there's a way to accommodate that.
I do want to comment. I've been to a meeting for one of the trips that Mr. Landreth has offered. I'm kind of gray on this, so I'm not 100% sure, but I really felt that he had provided opportunities or ways for students or parents to come up with some sort of fundraising. It wasn't through the school, it wasn't through SPAN, it wasn't through a PTO, but he had ideas that he was willing to share with anybody that was interested in that venue. I would double check with Mr. Landreth.
Yeah, I can check and see.
But I really felt the one that I went to a couple years ago, there was that there in the background.
Okay.
Any other comments about the consent agenda items? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, removing item number 1, personnel recommendations for action later. The items to be approved are approval of student tour requests, adoption of student textbook, renewal of medical dental insurance plans, abatement of working cash fund, approval of February 2012 expenditure report, ratification of January 2012 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes?
Ms. Caparelli, yes. Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, we have 2 information and discussion items on the agenda this evening. The first one is presentation of monthly financial statements.
Okay. There's not much new this month. Again, the state continues to owe the district money. They owe us $361,000 approximately. The district did receive a tax distribution of a little over $233,000 in the month of January for a total collection in all funds of $20.3 million. And that represents a 99.5% overall collection rate, which is comparable to the 10-year average. In the education and tort funds, the state owes us $269,000 for FY12 payments. And in the transportation fund, they owe us a little over $92,000. Again, same scenario we've been operating under for the last 2 years. And expenditures in the funds are comparable to prior year. I've included an investment schedule, and as you can see, the investments for the district are pretty low at this point in time. That's a result of two factors. One, as we get to this time of year, we don't have that much cash to invest. The other is that interest rates are so low that some of our investment vehicles that we have through Clarendon Hills Bank are actually providing a better rate of return than we can get by investing in CDs out elsewhere. And a lunch report, we're doing, our revenues are still a little bit low, and lunch participation has fallen off, but we're starting to close that gap between revenue and expenditures. Does anyone have any other questions?
I'm going to make a suggestion. Because the fund balance, like the fund balance summary is a 1 month snapshot. What I'd love to do is turn that into a visual and
Okay.
turn it into a trend. So I'm thinking of, sort of an XY bar chart, where Y is just the aggregate operating fund balances, right? So take the PMA, the operating funds, right? And then the x-axis is July, August, September, all the way out to the next June. What I'd like on each month is the aggregate fund balances, operating fund balances for each of those months for 2010, 11, and 12. The idea behind that is it's a visual representation of it's not a budget comparison, not the objective, but to give people an idea how our balances go up and then trail down, as well as how they stand compared to the previous 2 years.
Okay.
Kim, I have another similar, and I didn't bring it up during the consent agenda, but like the medical and dental information, that all of the information that you provided there, all was just percentages. But there's nowhere in that information where it indicated a percentage of what dollar amount. So, it's like, oh, well, it went up 0.67%, and well, that's great, because it could have been 9 or 10%. Well, if that's on $100, who really cares one way or the other? So on some of those types of things, when they're coming through either at the top or bottom, if we could have some kind of dollar amount baseline so that when you're reading it, you're not just looking at percentages and hoping that
Okay.
means good things. Yeah, that would be helpful, I think.
And I like the idea of a visual representation. And I guess my question is that something that's doable without, a lot of,
Sure, anything's doable.
Without a lot of.
Or a
without a
fee.
lot of time or whatever.
And the reason I
right?
thought about, the historical fund balances, because we do historical, the fund balance summary by month, going back forever. So it does mean that, one of Kim's many millions of people has to do something, but certainly not in a hurry for it. I think, again, it's a visual. I saw it that way, plus there was actually a couple other things presented at the IASB event back in November, and I have just been remiss in bringing it up. I thought it was a really strong visual.
Okay.
And, it's historical stuff that we get on a month-to-month basis anyway. So I realize there's initial work to set it up, but then subsequently, as you feed numbers into it, it just, you spit out a chart.
Okay.
I guess something I would add is, it's fine that we made this request, but is this what the board wants the administration to do? Is this, I'm fine, that's the direction it should come. That should be from the board, not an individual of the board, right?
Sure.
To be clear on it, right, I guess would be the only thing I would add. I'm fine if you want to change the chart, I guess. I don't know how much work it is, okay? Visual is always a little nicer, but I just think it's better if the direction comes from the whole board instead of an individual of the board.
I'm okay with it.
And I'm okay with that as well.
I'd love to have the visual, if it's something we can do.
I always want more detail. I think I make you crazy, so more is always better for me.
Okay, any further comments on the monthly financial statements? Okay, next item for discussion, strategic planning.
And included in your board book is a draft of the strategic plan, and this is, we went through a thorough process. We had staff, parents, community members, administrators involved in developing the strategic plan, and locked in on 4 core areas to focus on for the next few years. Student achievement, student services, and the district finances, and then also district facilities. And basically, this would be considered the first reading, and so it's an opportunity for the board to review the work that's been done and been submitted, and then based upon board discussion, questions, possible direction, then there may have to be an opportunity to bring the committee back together to look at it again. But then it would be brought to the board for a second reading and then ultimately adoption. And then it would become a public document. So, and I think many of our board members have been involved in the process as well. So with that, I open up to your questions or comments.
What's typically the lifespan of a strategic plan?
3 to 5 years.
So when you've got target completion dates here of 2012 so those goals are just wrapped up and nothing more will be done on those for the next 4 years?
What ends up happening is then you monitor, and so periodically there are reports to the committee that originally was put together and then also to the board and progress. In some cases, you're looking at those timelines and sometimes the recommendation is we need to bump that out or continue work in that area.
Right.
And so it just depends on.
And that's where the dashboard comes into play, correct?
Right.
I guess I would just add, as one of those board members that did spend many summer nights working on this, I would like to thank the administrators and everybody in the community who gave up all those nights and worked very hard. Many people worked a lot of long hours putting together this strategic plan here in front of us. And personally, overall, I think it looks wonderful, and I wouldn't want to touch it, but it's open to you guys for discussion. Thank you.
I think for me, this is the part where we take 4 conversations that have largely happened as 4 separate conversations, and we try to bring them together. It's worth pointing out a couple of there are goals stated and action statements that are made that at some point have to be reconciled, and I'll note that there's a finance piece. And the first goal of the finance piece is to reach a balanced operating budget by 2015, sustain that annually thereafter. But in student services, we talk quite a bit about, or I shouldn't say quite a bit, but there's notes for developing an expanded early childhood program, as well as additional technology integration. There's, in the student achievement piece, there's reference clearly to creating a district curriculum facilitator and coach, and that's a job description issue. And so there's a number of things that represent, important steps that cost money. As near as I can tell, between the notion of a district curriculum facilitator or effectively, just a curriculum director again, as well as, an expanded early childhood program and, some of the other technology things that go along with the things that we've looked at in student achievement and student services in particular, that adds several $100,000 to our operating budget. And it conflicts with that notion of balancing the budget by 2015, because right now we're not balanced. Right now we're upside down $400,000 or $500,000. So at some level, we are going to have to struggle with how we reconcile that, and how we either find money or lose things to do some other things. So, I'm just raising the red flag about, the notion that there are wish list items here that we don't have money for that will cost money. The other thing I will say is that, the mission statement, I was there, we worked on it, I liked it, except that I still was, what's the right word? Disappointed in it. It reads, the CUSD 201 mission is to educate and empower students to be academically prepared and socially responsible. feels like we stopped in the middle of a sentence. It doesn't talk about what we're preparing them for, to be. So, just as a suggestion, I wrote down, socially responsible citizens and leaders in the 21st century, but I'd love to see something that articulates a goal, a vision of something grand. Because just to say, oh, well, we're going to bring them to school, and we're going to teach them and keep them under control, it not exactly the most exciting, sort of concept that comes to mind there. So, those. I'd love to see the whole committee revisit, the whole thing one last time and see if they're satisfied with it. If they are, then I'm okay with that. But I just wanted to say out loud that it just feels like it's half a sentence, as it were.
And I guess, just following up a little bit on that, I'm fine with the way that it reads right now because we have all of the other kind of we believe statements underneath that add, I think, additional emphasis to the overall mission statement as it is in kind of a brief form. And I know there was a lot of discussion about this particular, the overall mission, because it's one of the first things that was worked on, if I remember correctly. But there's significantly more detail in the we believe statements about student achievement, student services, finance, and facilities that I think kind of speak to that. A little bit as far as the money goes, we struggle with this quite a bit as far as where are we going to get the money to do this, that, and the other thing. And I think we tend to approach it from the notion that everything we do currently is everything we should keep, and everything we should continue to do everything the way we're doing it now and never change anything. And that's kind of the easy thing to say. But I know we talked a little bit before about that EPIRT process, and that might bring some extra realization and ideas to what we can do. So I don't want to just limit ourselves to everything we do now is the best that we can possibly be and never have any, belief that we can do things differently and improve things in the future. So I think where your priorities are is where your money will go. And so it'll be up to us to struggle with that and to identify that. I have just a couple of other questions about the strategic plan itself, and that was just the notion about weaving it into evaluations, administrative evaluations, staff evaluations, and how it gets thread into that as far as goals for individual staff members or whatnot, just to kind of, if this is the focal point, if this is the center point of what we believe, what we do, then it should be woven throughout the fabric of our district, and I think that would include things like performance evaluations. I also have a question as far as we go along with the strategic plan, how reporting is going to come back to the board. Or is it going to come back somewhat in a table format like this and then, expanding out, and listing more detail, the action items that occurred in relationship to updating curriculum maps, say, and who helped accomplish that and that sort of thing as far as timelines of activity. I think that would be helpful to kind of keep the format the same and just keep bringing it back, adding more pieces as more is done.
Which kind of speaks to Mary Kay's question about what happens after that date is hit, so we need some kind of mechanism that allows us to continue to see.
And I think if we, I'm sorry if I interrupted you, if we see what the dashboard will look like, because my assumption is, I know where I used to work, we had the strategic plan, and then the dashboard was updated quarterly, and I assume that it's something along those lines. So if we could get a visual of what the dashboard might look like, that would probably help us a great deal. And I just want to touch on the strategic plan, because the strategic plan is exactly that. And I think the fact that we addressed our desire as one of our goals to have a balanced budget in the strategic plan, it's a goal to strive for, and it's a goal I think we can reach. We can't just stop doing what we do because we're upside down. We can't stop educating our kids because we're upside down. I can't keep my child at home because we're upside down. We still have to move forward, and to do that, it costs money. It costs money to educate our kids. We can't just stop doing it. So the strategic plan is that. It gives us goals to strive for, something to track on. So I think it looks great.
Question?
Not a question so much as a comment. At the end of the last meeting, when the strategic planning committee met, and I'm just going to say it for everybody's benefit because you and I talked about it a little bit, is it's through the 4 components, it's fairly inconsistent as far as parental or community involvement. So looking through the student services piece, for example, there's fairly robust goals around parent involvement, and it's more clearly articulated. But in some of the other pieces, we intellectually know that there should be community and parent involvement, but I don't think we've done as effective a job across some of the others of sort of articulating what that looks like and where that needs to happen. And it is something that's talked about quite a bit, is how do we get more involvement and how do we keep people involved and all that type of thing. So if it's a whole committee back together, or if it's a smaller group, maybe to just go through, I think the student services is a better representation of the inclusive than maybe some of the others are, as far as how to get all the stakeholders incorporated. So I just wanted to say that so everyone heard it. Kevin and I talked a little bit about that at the end of the meeting last go around. And then my other, I guess, request would be, if we're getting the committee back together, I missed one of the meetings over the series of time that we did this, so I don't know if it happened there, but generally speaking, once we broke off into our 4 groups, the walls went up and, ne'er the 4 shall meet. And I think if we get back together with whatever feedback comes out of today's discussion, we should try to get back together as a whole group the way we started, and really look at all. So for example, if I had really had time and been able to go through the student services, there's some good examples there of how to incorporate parents. And I maybe could have gotten that into the student achievement piece a little bit better because there was a good example. So I think we need to get everybody mushed back together and start to talk about strategic plan as a whole, and do these things support one another. Because the other thing I noticed is the student achievement and student services both have a big technology, and they're pretty close. Even though completely different people worked on them and completely different people worded them, the outcome was pretty similar. And we can even make it more robust and get that language lined up even tighter, so that we have some real clear direction for technology that'll hit both of those areas. So I would say, just for the benefit of everybody, of all the meetings and all the things that we have to do as board members and all the time we put in, this committee was by far, for me, the most positive experience since I've been involved with the district or the board. Got to meet a lot of people I wouldn't necessarily have met otherwise, and the work that we did was positive. We didn't always agree, but we agreed in the end because we listened to each other and were respectful and put a lot of time and effort. So thank you to people there's quite a few people here who were involved, as well as the people at the table. It was a very positive experience all the way through. So thank you.
Briefly, as far as your parent involvement piece, in the student achievement group, which I know is the one that you were involved in, the last one is utilize co-curriculars to enhance student achievement. Implied in there is activity by boosters and all that sort of thing that go to that particular strategy that's listed.
And to your point, I want to go from implied to specified. That was kind of my gripe was, there's places I can see where that could be wrapped in now, particularly using the other as an example. But I think we want to.
The only thing I fear, I guess, in bringing the whole group is that we start this process of rehash again, which I worry about a little bit. because the committee went kind of from the broad then to the very narrow, and people focused on their particular groups, which I think was a fine strategy to work on, because it is, to try and pay attention to everything, you really can't be as productive. So I worry about that, is that, well, what if I want to change this thing in finance, and and I never sat through all the discussion that went on in that group, and then I come in and say, hey, I want to do this. I think this is great. And then, I kind of feel it's a little bit rude, I guess, for lack of a better word. But
I would agree with you, Joel. I wasn't in all the other conversations. I went to all the meetings, but, we were able to choose what area we wanted to focus on. And one of the areas, the area I chose, of course, was finance, but I wasn't in on all the other conversations. I know that there was a lot of teachers, parents. There was some very robust conversations going on in some of these groups. And I think to step back in and now say that, well, I want this or I want that, I'm not sure. I would have to believe that it was all talked about. I would want to believe it was. It looks like it is here on the plan. So I agree. I'm not sure getting the whole group back together again is, to start going over the whole thing again would be the best area. It did seem to strategize from the big picture, big group, down, finalize to where we are here. Is there a little tweaking? Well, there can always be a little tweaking in any plan that you have. I just think, the structure and, what was put together here in front of us is, the direction that we should take. So, and Shannon, I am definitely with you 100%. I want community involvement in everything we do. So, we did put it in the finance piece there with the, the very first thing is finance committee develops policy. Well, that's the public. Anybody can be on that committee who wants to be on that committee. Okay, so, that's just as one example. And if I could just for 1 second, Dan, I know you and I were on that finance together, and we had several good conversations there, but we did talk about the ePERT system quite a bit, and we do have the February 2013 as the target date for that. Now, hopefully that is going to give us some direction in where we can save money, where we can spend money, where we might find some money. So as much as I share your concern, I want that balanced budget. I also share Mary Kay's concerns. I want to make sure that we continue to move the district forward. So I do think it's all. I think it's all in there. I really do. So
I'm a fairly simple and uncomplicated guy. If we're going to find $600,000 or $700,000, it means we're not doing something. So, and by definition, somebody who's already doing that is not going to have the opportunity to do that. So, I'm just a simple guy. The other thing I would note, though, for instance, that integrating the community involvement thing, which I love, I don't know, again, that whole finance committee thing, it's an implicit as opposed to an explicit, which is what Shannon's point is. But our third goal about communicating district financial position, actually, I would suggest integrating, the community involvement piece into that in terms of forming a community-based finance committee, which, can then not only understand it and give advice to it, but then can sort of speak to it as well in the community. Having said that, I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to bring all four of these pieces together and see them all as one whole, to think about their interactions and to consider how the four work together. I wouldn't personally view, and I don't think Kevin would certainly undertake it this way, as as bringing the whole group back together as a restart at all. We're, for the most part, final, except that there's an opportunity there to bring the entire group back, to see the entire plan as a whole and not in its parts. And to the extent that there are some fantastic ideas that come out of a discussion, and at this point, I'm going to rely on Kevin and the administrative team to be somewhat of an arbiter about, what else gets into this beast. So I don't think there's any harm in bringing the group back together. And B, I don't think it would be, rude at all. I think it gives people an opportunity to see the whole as opposed to just knowing their part.
Once the strategic plan is voted on, I don't want to use the term dead, but it's no longer, it doesn't change once it's been voted on. Is that correct?
No, it can change. I mean, strategic plans should be viewed as kind of living, breathing documents.
Right.
Because, you know, for instance, you know, there could be something that occurs and, you know, timeline, for instance, we need to bump that
Extends,
out
sure.
a year or something, or, you know, I'm trying to think if there possibly could be even legislation that comes along and then.
That changes
now we
things,
need
sure.
to tweak this a little bit. So it's something, but, you know, again, you would follow a similar process. You'd bring people together, talk about those things, bring it to the board. You know, it's not the same as a board policy, but per se, but board policy can be modified and changed. Same thing with strategic plans, they can be modified and changed.
Because the dashboard is the more animated of the documents, which is a direct offshoot of the strategic plan.
Right, that's one way, in terms of measuring progress, the dashboard is one way to measure progress. And so, and that entity, you know, that's reporting, a way to report. And so I think somebody asked the question, okay, how does that operate, how does it work? Well, you know, quarterly there would be reports to the board, you know, more than just, you know, a document, but rather a report would be articulated, this is where we are in these different arenas. And then even, you know, the superintendent's report, my recommendation would be that, you know, there could be some topical items, but then also, you know, reporting back in those 4 core areas, you know, in terms of this is progress, or these are some of the things that are happening within those areas.
Well, yeah, I think, because Mary Kay seems to have a pretty clear picture in her head of what a dashboard is and does and looks like because you have experience with it. You know, when I read the word dashboard, I have like, you know, 15 different pictures in my head of what that could be and how it could work. So it sounds to me like you're more excited about that, and I'm still a little more like, well, you know, what does that really mean exactly? It's a good word, but so, because dashboard to me, I thought more of as a parent tool, not as a board tool. So I think we want to understand what that's really going to do for us.
Yeah.
The dash, you know, the reason, and again, the analogy, the reason why it's called a dashboard is if you think of your car, and your car has different indicators that tell you if there's a problem or if things are going okay. You know, your oil gauge, your gas gauge, all those different things. And it's the same type of thing within these different areas. There's, you know, there's a targeted goal that you want to meet, and then there's, you know, typically you look at your historical average and where you're at, and then graphically, then you show your progress and where you're at in relation to the goal. And in some cases, you can even do it as simple as, you know, red, green, yellow. Green meaning everything's great. Yellow, things are starting to slide a little bit. We need to keep an eye on it. Red is, boy, that really, you know, we really need to get on that and address it. And it's something that's very public. It's on your website. It's something that the board sees. It's something that the community sees. And so it's just a very quick reference, you know, to see where you're at in these different areas.
I'm trying to see her picture, you know.
Sure, sure.
It's not that exciting.
Well, I don't know. It seemed pretty exciting watching you talk about it. So, you know, I'm hoping it's at least half that.
Well, you know, so many organizations do their strategic plan and then throw it on top of a file cabinet, and that's where it stays, and it's never referenced again. And the dashboard is the part where you can see exactly what steps are being taken to get to the goal. So it is exciting.
And I guess as far as timelines go, if you say it's a 3-year, but you get into it and you find out, wow, there's a lot still here to do at the end of 3 years, I mean, it certainly seems like it would be a reasonable option just to say, we're going to continue because our work isn't done yet, and make it a 4-year or whatever. I know SACID ran into a similar thing where their strategic plan was very ambitious, and they ended up with it, and a lot of things just ended up getting carried over into the new plan, which then was a 5-year plan. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it does, I do see possibility to kind of approach it in a more living manner.
You know,
I'm just going to say, and it's pretty much my last thing on this, as far as bringing the committee together, I've kind of already expressed my thought on that. I'm fine with not doing it and moving forward with what we have.
Kevin, just administratively, I noticed going through, there's some spell check
Oh, right.
problems where it picked words that aren't the words that were obviously there to begin with and that type of thing. So as we move closer to a finalized document, somebody with a critical eye needs to go through there because it would change things like in light of to in spite of. And there's a couple of odd little wordings when you really read it in detail that it obviously picked a completely different word that doesn't make any sense.
Right. No, yeah, all those edits will be taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe somewhat, the plan was to bring the committee back together, if anything, just to say, to thank them for all their work, and here's the finished product. That we can still do that, and I think somebody had referenced this. I think if you structure the protocols well enough, you can get some feedback and maybe some minor tweaking, but at the same time, I can share with you that some people who are very much invested in this process, their concern was that the board would make changes because, there were some debates over the wording and exactly what word should be put in there and what should it say. And so then, for another entity to change that word, that there was some level of concern. So, what can be brought back to the committee is, some of the comments that the board had made, structure some protocols to, take a look at it, kind of give it that final polish and then, bring it back. But then also incorporate a little bit of a celebration for all the hard work and time and hours and all those things. Any other questions?
All right. Superintendent's report.
With the superintendent's report, the first item is the climate committee. We met on February 21st. And that committee now, similar to the strategic plan, I guess, we're dividing and conquering because we definitely want, by the end of this year, to have some progress made and some tangibles in place. And so the four groups, one group is we're creating web resources that will be for parents, for students, for staff along the lines of school climate, so that if issues are being experienced, even at home or with students or in the school setting, there'll be some resources for people to go to and take a look at. And so we're working on that piece. Another group is actually looking at ideas and plans for whether you call it bullying awareness or anti-bullying week that would be implemented in all the buildings, similar to what we do with the drug awareness,
Red ribbon.
Red
ribbon week that we do in October. So similar to that. So we have a group that's actively planning those activities, and then we have another group. There are, just like there are Illinois learning standards, there's the social emotional standards as well, Illinois social emotional standards. And one of the things that if we can start aligning some of the things that we're doing in the classroom and some of the activities to those Illinois social emotional learning standards, what happens then is, again, as students move through our school district, we address some of those behaviors at an earlier age. And so the example I used with the committee is, when your 2-year-old says no for the first couple times, it's cute, and we kind of chuckle. When they're 16 years old and they're saying no, it's no longer cute and we're no longer chuckling. And so it's kind of addressing some behaviors at an early age that we have sometimes a tendency to say, it's just kids being kids, or this will go away. And then all of a sudden we have junior high and high school students who maybe are involved in some of the same behaviors, and it's no longer just solely innocent, and then we're trying to address it. So the idea then is to create resources, again, for teachers to be used in the classroom that'll get us along the lines of addressing the social emotional standards. And then the fourth group is along the lines of communicating to parents, is identifying data that we can be looking at and tracking beyond just surveying as a district, to see there are certain behaviors we want to see change within our school community. And then communicating that to our staff as well as our parents, because one of the things that we know in education is when you're measuring something that has a tendency then to be a focus and things happen then. So we're making it very clear the things that we're measuring as a district that we value, then we should start to see progress in those areas. So those 4 groups are working on those, and we've got a couple meetings scheduled in the near future to continue working in those areas with, again, the goal by the end of the year, we have some tangible plans in place in order to address these behaviors. The other item is the Small Giants project, which when we start talking about our vision as a district, we want to be that unique entity, in the world of education. We want to be that small giant. And along that continuum now, within our buildings, our staff are focusing on that and developing, lesson plans and unit plans and visiting other districts and improving our practice within our district. And so they had several choices to choose from to develop these projects. And then they're being mentored. And in order to avoid it being evaluative in nature, what we did is administrators are mentoring teachers, but in different buildings other than their own, to help with that. But at the same time, if teachers want to work with their building administration, they have that option. And so, and then we have a lot of time for these projects. So with the Institute Day, there's some things we're doing as a district, but then they'll have time to continue working on and developing their projects.
I just have a question about, you said there were several to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find a fairly even or reasonable distribution between all the different things, or did they tend to gravitate towards, 1 or 2 of the choices?
It's most of I would say the staff are taking what their current practice, and what we talk about is transitioning from teacher-centered instruction to student-centered instruction. So a lot of our staff are focusing on that area, looking at what they're doing and transitioning to differentiate, higher levels of differentiation and more student-centered, problem-based instruction. So that's where a lot of the projects are headed. So sure. And that kind of, the Small Giants project kind of ties in a little bit to the Danielson piece, the Danielson framework. With the recent legislation, school districts have to look at their evaluation plan, and they have to make significant changes to the evaluation plan. And like many districts, there's the work of Charlie Danielson, and you've got just kind of a one-page placemat, is what it's referred to, that kind of gives you a general overview of what the expectations are then for staff within our buildings. And part of this process, we have our task force, which is looking at our plan, developing the new one, and again, on Friday with the Institute Day, progress is going to be communicated to the staff. But in addition to that, we're also involved with the Consortium for Educational Change, and so one of the advantages of belonging to that consortium is you're able to pool resources, and we're able to take advantage of resources. And so one of the things that they have in place are 4 modules that will basically indoctrinate your staff, give them a very strong foundation in the work of Charles Danielson and what this means for teacher evaluation and that whole student growth piece and what this all means. And so the task force thinks that it definitely would be of value for our staff to work through these modules. A facilitator comes to the district, and it's not only the classroom, but they also have areas for social workers, school psychologists, speech, those other entities as well. And so what we're proposing is that we would do this spring the first 2 modules, and then next fall when we open the school year, we would do the 3rd and 4th, so that by the time we get into that school year, we'll be up and running.
And who facilitates? Where do they come from?
From the CEC. So
okay.
these are individuals that have been trained, and so they come in and work with our staff. In order to accomplish this, though, what I'll be coming at our next board meeting to the board with, and the CEC can accommodate us April 12th and May 2nd, and it's a 3-hour module, and so we'd be looking to modify our school calendar and have 2 early releases in order to accomplish that. So we'll be coming to the board asking to amend our calendar, and then we'll make sure we get that information out to our parents as well. Any other questions on that? And then as far as FOIAs, you have the 2 FOIA requests. We're working on those. We did ask for an extension because of the amount of information that we're currently gathering. And, but we will be able to, March 2nd. Wish it was May 2nd. But March 2nd, we'll have all that information available. So we'll complete that request. And that's my report.
Okay, next item on the agenda is board reports. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share?
I just had a quick thing. Miller, for the first time, as far as I can have understood, for the first time in a very long time, if ever, had a variety show. So for folks that are South or Manning parents, it's kind of a smaller version of Twilight Stars. And we had tremendous participation from the very, very youngest kids all the way through the older ones. Magic and telling jokes and dancing and singing and everything you can possibly imagine, and things I never imagined those kids would stand up there and do, because we certainly wouldn't stand up and do some of the things they did. And it was just a fabulous experience, and I know that particularly just wanted to comment because the 2 admins, our full-time and part-time office admins, put the entire program together. Organized it, ran it, did everything, just did absolutely everything to pull it off, and it was fabulous, and the kids were just, they were just lined up on both sides of the room waiting to go on stage. It was really an amazing experience, and I just wanted to kind of recognize that success, and we're going to encourage it to continue to happen next year. And building on some of the Twilight Stars idea, maybe look at visual arts and some of those types of things too. So for our fledgling effort, it was absolutely fantastic, and the kids were wonderful. So.
I attended, I'm sorry,
go
Gary.
ahead.
I attended the SACID meeting last week as the alternate. And I just wanted to mention, they presented Addison Trails Leo Club. And Leo is the youth version of the Lions Club. And Addison Trails, they started in 2010, and it's the first high school in the nation, the program in the nation made up of visually impaired SACID members. So it was really impressive to see them present and all the things that they're doing at Addison Trails for this. And one of the things that I found very interesting was the Lions Club International approached the McDonald's Corporation to recruit some of the Leo Club kids to participate in accessibility ideas for their restaurants. The locations of the dispensers, the locations of the restroom, the layout of the restaurant. And so I thought that was really intriguing and exciting, especially for those kids. So I just wanted to acknowledge Addison Trails because I think they're doing something really good. They've got 20 kids in the program right now, so.
And I believe they're very hands-on as far as working with the students. I think one year they helped them construct birdhouses and do some things that would be very difficult if you're visually impaired, so.
They're planting trees for Arbor Day this year.
Right, there you go.
I just wanted to remind everybody that the school plays this weekend. That's all. Go out and enjoy the play.
Right, I was going to mention the high school musical this weekend, How to Succeed at Business Without Really Trying. And they have performances Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then in addition, next week on March 7th, our high school band is hosting the North Shore Band. And it's a unique opportunity to have this group come and perform at the high school, and also our high school band will be performing, and also we'll be doing a piece with the North Shore Band. And so I encourage people to take advantage of this opportunity and attend that event.
There is one more event this weekend, more on the community lines. The Westmont Cub Scouts have their annual Pinewood Derby this weekend, which is pretty much the biggest event that's done, and it's at the Westmont Park District Gym. The event's gotten so large that we had to go for the biggest room we could find in Westmont. There will be Vincentori has graciously donated pizza, and there will be drinks and all sorts of things for sale, and the kids will be racing the cars that they've made, and it's just a really fun family community night. Always a little bit of a conflict with the high school musical, which was fun last year when some of our kids were in both. But just a fun event that it's open to the public. People are welcome to come and check out what the Cub Scouts are doing in Westmont, Saturday at 5 o'clock in the main gym.
Good. Next item is public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is closed session. Chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining and personnel issues.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Ms. Caparelli, yes. Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
And there will be a vote?
Yes.
There will be
There will
We'll
be
have
action.
one action item
consent agenda.
from the consent agenda after we get out from closed. All right, thank you very much. We're back from closed session. We have one action item from our consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the personnel recommendations as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Let's do Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes?
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli? Yes. Motion carries.
Very good. Chair will entertain, well, is there anything else? Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.